What if the world was a giant rat trap and every little joy was just bait? Once upon a snowy evening, in a land of silent forests and frosted lakes, wandered a lonely peddler with a bundle of rat traps and a belief that the world was nothing but one big trap. And he was already caught. But one winter night, a stranger opened her door, offered him food and trust, and turned a tale of theft into a miracle of redemption. Welcome, dear explorers, to the Eloquent Explorers, where stories breathe and English comes alive. Today, we enter Selma Lagerlöf's magical tale, The Rat Trap, where warmth melts even the coldest hearts. Whether you're in class 12 or chasing dreams through PGT English exams, this story is your golden key to understanding literary transformation, symbolism, and soul. Here is what we will explore today. We will begin by getting to know our author, Selma Lagerlöf. We will then get to know the setting, which is the time and place of the story. I will then give you a brief introduction. After that, we will discuss the chapter in detail, where I will read paragraph wise and explain it to you in depth. We are going to then discuss the quick recap and the main events that have taken place in this story. Finally, we are going to discuss the literary aspects of the story that include themes, tone, mood, and style, literary devices, and the main characters, and end our video with the message that our story conveys. In this tale, a thief gets caught, not by iron bars, but by kindness. Stick around. This story may just catch your heart too. Let's begin. Selma Lagerlöf is a Swedish author and the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1909. This is a very important point to remember, the first and the very important point to remember, specifically if you're preparing for exams like KBS or AWES. Questions such as these are asked as to from the authors who all are the Nobel Prize winners. So one is Selma Lagerlöf, and the other we have here is Pablo Neruda, whose poem we're going to read. We're going to study in detail in the upcoming videos. So remember that Selma Lagerlöf was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1909. Okay, so very important. Please note it down somewhere. Now, she's known for her spiritual themes. She generally uses folklore and fairy tale like storytelling, which we will see in this story also, that this story unfolds like a story, like a fairy tale. Okay, so that's her writing style. And she generally uses spiritual themes to write her stories. Her stories emphasize compassion, redemption, and the power of goodness. All three will be visible in our story. Okay, universal theme in her writing is essential human goodness can be awakened through understanding and love. Now, this again will be evident in the story because you will see how kindness can change a person, the very nature and the very belief of a person. Okay. Now, she wrote both realistic and fantasy based stories which were deeply rooted in Swedish history, landscapes, and legend. So, her settings will be Swedish, will be somewhere in Sweden. Okay. This story is also set in Sweden's iron rich countryside. Countryside is village, okay, the village area, where iron mines play a key symbolic role. The Rat Trap follows a moral fable style blending realism with allegory and Christian undertones. Okay, So this story is also a kind of a fable. Fables are stories that generally have animal characters as lead, and they give you a message like patience, like perseverance, like honesty, courage. All these kinds of messages are given through fables. So this rat trap is also kind of a fable, although the lead character here, or none of the characters here, are animals, which is kind of different from fable. Okay, but she's taken this style and she's adapted it to write the story. Okay, and it has realism, that is, she has blended, she has mixed you can say real life situations and circumstances with allegory and Christian undertones. Here she's talking about it, this story is also like an allegory. Okay, and also it has Christian undertones where she talks about redemption, she talks about sin, and all such things that are a part of Christianity, okay, and the Christian beliefs. Now we see that the setting is in rural Sweden, rural again, village area, okay, which is rich with iron ore. There are three major settings in this within this setting. First is the crofter's cottage, then second is the dark forest, which is a symbol of moral confusion, and then third is the setting of the iron master's manor. Okay, this is a symbol of redemption and grace. Set in rural Sweden during the cold winters of early 20th century, the rat trap follows the journey of a poor vagabond who sells handmade rat traps and often resorts to petty theft for survival. Life has taught him that the world is like a giant rat trap. It lures people with riches, shelter, and food, only to trap them in misery. But everything changes when he is unexpectedly shown kindness, which stirs his conscience and sets him on a path of moral redemption. It beautifully illustrates how empathy and love can transform even the most hardened individuals. It encourages readers to look beyond appearances and give people a second chance. With that said, let's discuss the story in depth. I will urge you to keep your books open and pencils in your hands so that you can also underline and write down the meanings of the difficult words as we go through the chapter. Please bring your focus here. Once upon a time, there was a man who went around selling small rat traps of wire. He made them himself at odd moments, from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farms. But even so, the business was not especially profitable. So he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery to keep body and soul together. Even so, his clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger gleamed in his eyes. The story opens by telling us the condition of our vagabond, our rat trap seller. Okay, there was, and you can see it begins like a fable, it begins like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, this is the symbol, this is the, you can say, the traditional starting of fairy tales. All right. So once upon a time, there was a man, our rat trap seller, who made small rat traps. These are the rat traps in which you can catch the rats of wire. Okay, he made them himself at odd moments whenever he got time from the material he got by begging. So he used to collect the material through begging in the stores or at big farms. He would beg for wires, and even still, the business was not profitable. So he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery. So along with this making of rat traps, he would beg, and also he would at times commit theft. He would steal so that he could survive.
Okay, to keep body and soul together means to survive. Even still, even though he would do all these things, his cheeks were sunken. Sunken means that he was so poor still that um, his cheeks, his cheekbones were visible. The flesh of his face had sunk in his inside in the bones. Okay, so his cheekbones were visible, and there was hunger in his eyes. So even after selling rat traps, even after stealing, and even after begging, he could not collect enough to survive. He could not get enough to survive. So he was very thin, and there was hunger in his eyes. No one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear to such a vagabond who plods along the road, left to his own meditations. Okay? Now, no one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear. Okay? But one day this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to be entertaining. He had naturally been thinking of his rat traps when suddenly he was struck by the idea that the whole world about him, the world with its lands and seas, its cities and villages, was nothing but a big rat trap. It had never existed for any other purpose than to set baits for people. It offered riches and joys. Just a sec. Okay. Yes. And to set baits for people, it offered riches and joys, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the rat trap offered cheese and pork. And as soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, it closed on him, and then everything came to an end. So here, because he was left to his sad and monotonous life, monotonous is something that doesn't change, it stays the same, so it often gets boring. Okay, so no one can imagine how sad his life was, and monotonous his life was to such a vagabond. Vagabond is a beggar, a person without a home or a job. Okay, a person who keeps traveling from place to place, who plods along the road, who walks in a tired manner. Okay, left to his own meditations. Meditations here means to think. Okay, so nobody can imagine how sad and how boring the life of a person who does not have a shelter, who does not have a family, who does not have a home, and who's left to wander here and there is. Okay, a person who's left to think whatever they want. All right, so one day this man, while thinking about rat traps, while thinking about his own rat traps, the ones that he used to make, he got struck by an idea. He started thinking of the whole world as a rat trap. Okay, he started comparing the world to the world as a he started comparing the world to the rat trap. All right, and just like the rat trap, its sole function is to catch the rat, okay, and to kill, and then the rat ends up dying. All right, generally the rat ends up dying. So how a rat trap catches the rat is that there is bait here. Okay, let's take yellow for cheese. Let's make cheese here. All right, so let's say there is cheese here. All right, there is a piece of cheese here, and let's say there's a piece of pork flesh here, okay, hanging in this rat trap. So now what happens is that the rat gets attracted to it, and it comes in, the rat comes in, and this shutter, this closes. Okay, so the rat is trapped inside. Okay, similarly, the vagabond, our rat trap seller, thinks that the world is also like a rat trap. Okay, it sets bait for people. Bait is something, bait is something that is used for persuading or attracting someone. So what are baits that are available in this world? Everything that we see, every material that we see, okay? Any material that we see is bait for humans. Like cheese and pork is for rats. Any material that we see here, the land, the houses, the roads, the food, people, everything is bait for us. Alright. For people. Okay? So, so he compares, now he starts comparing the world, and he forms this thinking, this notion that the world is also a huge, a giant rat trap with everything, its villages, its cities, its lands and seas, and all these have only existed to set bait for people, okay? That the world offers riches, it offers shelter, it offers food, heat, clothing, exactly like the rat trap offers cheese and pork. And as soon as anybody lets inside, as soon as anybody enters the world, just like as soon as the rat enters the rat trap and touches the bait, okay, and tries to eat the cheese or the pork, okay, similarly, just as people enter the world and try to, you know, get familiar with the worldly possessions, the things that the world has to offer, the world closes on them, okay, just like the rat trap closes on the rat, the world closes on them. Closes on them here means that it makes them, you know, stuck. They get stuck in this world and in this and in the want of materialistic things, okay, in the want of worldly possessions. And then finally everything comes to an end. I hope this symbolism of rat and how it rat trap and how it has been compared to the world is clear to you. It will get further evident as we continue through the story. Okay. The world had of course never been very kind to him. So it gave him unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. It became a cherished pastime of his during many dreary ploddings, to think of people he knew who had let themselves be caught in the dangerous snare, and of others who were still circling around the bait. Okay, so of course the word nobody had treated this poor beggar kindly. Okay, so it gave him this unusual pleasure, it gave him the pleasure to think ill of people. You know, like when you're you can say when you are not treated well by, let's say, a group, okay, so it gives you some unusual joy to think bad about them, to think that they are evil, or to think that they are whatever they are doing is not right, or whatever you can say they are doing, they're going to face something bad through that. Okay, so this is how this this beggar started thinking, that our vagabond, our rat trap seller started thinking, it became his cherished, his favorite pastime during those many long, not very boring, uninteresting ploddings, walks that he used to take to go from one place to another. He got a lot of free time then, so it gave him that joy to think that there are a lot of people in this world who have been caught in this bait, okay, who have been caught by the bait and who've been caught in the world, and now they're stuck, and then stuck in this dangerous snare. Snare is a trap, okay, just like the rat trap, okay, a snare is a trap. So he enjoys thinking about people who have already been caught in this dangerous trap, and of others who are still, you know, about to reach the bait, who are still circling, who are still trying to understand the bait, and then as soon as they catch it, as soon as they start you know, enjoying it, he knows that they will also end up you know, stuck here. All right, so one dark evening, as he was trudging along the road, he caught sight of a little grey cottage by the roadside, and he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. Nor he was refused. Instead of the sour faces which ordinarily met him, the owner, who was an old man without a wife or a child, was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. Immediately he put the porridge pot on the fire and gave him supper. Then he carved off such a big slice from his tobacco roll that it was enough both for the stranger's pipe and his own. Finally, he got out an old pack of cards and played Meolis. Meolis. Okay, the J is silent, so it is Meolis with his guest until bedtime. Now, what happens is that one dark evening, as he was walking along the road with slow, heavy steps, because he was very tired, he caught sight of a little grey cottage. Now there he went. He knocked at the door to ask for shelter. Surprisingly, he was not refused. Okay, because everywhere he went, always people met him with sour faces, with unhappy expressions. All right, but this time it was different. The owner was an old man, and he was all alone. He did not have a wife or a child, and therefore he was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. Seeing this vagabond and thinking of him as a company, he immediately puts the porridge pot on fire and cooks dinner for him. Okay, and then he carves a big slice from his tobacco roll and divides it and gives one to the stranger and keeps one for himself to smoke. Okay, finally, after the dinner was done and they had smoked and they were enjoying, he takes out an old pack of cards. Okay, these are the cards, and plays Meolis. Meolis is a card game that originated from Sweden. Okay, and until bedtime, until the time they had to go to sleep, they played Meolis. Okay. Now the old man was just as generous with his confidences as with his porridge and tobacco. What this means is that the old man was very trusting. Okay. The guest was informed at once that in his days of prosperity, his host had been a crofter at Ramshaw Ironworks. Okay, this was a very famous ironworks iron mill, which does not work anymore. Okay, and he had worked on the land. Now that he was no longer able to do day labor, it was his cow which supported him. Yes, that Bossy was extraordinary. She could give milk for the creamery every day. Last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. Okay, so he tells us, this old man, he starts sharing his secrets with the stranger, the person he doesn't know. Okay, so he tells him that he had been a crofter at Ramshaw Ironworks. Ramshaw Ironworks, as I told you, was a mill, was an iron ore mill where people used to get iron, and so there he used to work as a crofter, as a person who farms croft. Okay. Basically, croft is a small rented farm. That is, we generally find such kind of farms in Scotland, and they are actually arable lands. They are fertile lands, and he used to work there on the land. And at that time, he was very rich. Okay, he was very prosperous. All right, and now that he was no longer able to work on that farm, on that land, there was a cow. He had a cow, and that was all that supported him. So this Bossy is being used to refer to the cow. All right, so he talks about this cow, that she is very extraordinary and that she could give milk for the creamery every day. Last month, by selling milk, he had received 30 kroner in payment. Now this is very important, okay, because from here the main story of our character begins. Okay, from this point onwards, you're going to see that what happens in his life and how his life changes thereafter. Okay, so this is the first step towards the change of his life and of his thinking. Okay, so he tells the stranger that last month he earned 30 kroner in payment. Kroner is the currency of Sweden. Okay. The stranger must have seemed incredulous, for the man got up and went to the window, took down a leather pouch which hung on the nail in the very window frame, and picked out 3 wrinkled 10-kroner bills. These he held up before the eyes of his guest, nodding knowingly, and then stuffed them back into the pouch. Okay. Now, when he said that, when he was telling him that this cow could give milk enough for him to earn 30 kroner in payment in cash, the stranger had an expression which showed him that the stranger did not believe that he could earn so much from just one cow. Okay, so to make him believe about this statement, this old man, the host, gets up, goes to the window, and takes down a leather pouch. The leather pouch was hanging on the window, on the nail in the very window frame. From there, from that pouch, he picked out 3 notes, 3 10 kroner notes. Okay, the notes were of 10 kroner. How many were there? 3. Okay, so which makes it 30 kroner. Okay, so he got 30 kroner in payment. So to make this guest believe that he had received 30 kroner for milk in the last month, he shows him this pouch. Now he holds all the bills, the notes in front of this stranger, and finally the stranger and nods, believing that finally happy to see that the stranger now believes him. He puts them back to stuffs them in the pouch and puts them back where they belonged, from where he got them. All right. Now the next day, both men got up in good season. This is again a phrase. The crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow, and the other man probably thought he should not stay in bed when the head of the house had gotten up. They left the cottage at the same time. The crofter locked the door and put the key in his pocket. The man with the rat trap said goodbye and thank you, and thereupon each went up his own way. Okay. Now what happens is that the next day, both men got up in good season. That means they got up early. Both of them got up early. All right. Now the crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow. So our vagabond also thought that it is not polite to stay in bed, to continue sleeping when the head of the house had already gotten up and was ready to leave. Now they both left the cottage at the same time. The crofter locked the door and put the key in his pocket. And the man with the rat traps, our vagabond, he said goodbye and thanked him for the dinner and to letting him stay. And then after that, both of them went their own ways. But now see what happens. Half an hour later, the rat trap peddler stood again before the door. He did not try to get in, however. He only went up to the window, smashed a pane, stuck it in his hand, and got hold of the pouch with the 30 kroner. He took the money and thrust it into his own pocket. Then he hung the leather pouch very carefully back in its place and went away. Now what happens is that half an hour later, our rat trap peddler, our vagabond, comes back to the same crofter's cottage. Okay. Now he had already seen where the pouch was hung, so he stood before the door, but he did not get in there. He instead went towards the window. Okay, smashed the window pane, smashed this glass, and when he put his hand inside, he got hold of the pouch that was hanging here, and he took the money from it, all the 3 notes, shoved them into his pocket, put the bag back, and then very carefully he put the pouch back where it was supposed to be and went away. So he stole those 30 kroners. Okay, those 3 kroner bills he stole. As he walked along with money in his pocket, he felt quite pleased with his smartness. He realized, of course, that at first he dared not continue on the public highway, but must turn off the road into the woods. During the first hours this caused him no difficulty. Later in the day it became worse, for it was a big and confusing forest which he had gotten into. He tried to be sure to walk in a definite direction, but paths twisted back and forth so strangely. He walked and walked without coming to the end of the wood, and finally realized that he had only been walking around in the same part of the forest. All at once he recalled his thoughts about the world and the rat trap. Now his own turn had come. He had let himself be fooled by a bait and had been caught. The whole forest, with its trunks and branches, its thickets and fallen logs, closed upon him like an impenetrable prison, from which he could never escape. Now, first, as he walked away from the crofter's house, he was very happy. He was very pleased with himself, with the smartness with that he had used to steal. Okay, and he realized that he should not walk on a public highway lest people see him. Okay, so instead he turned off the road. He moved away from the road into the woods, into the forest. Now, during the first few hours, it did not cause him any difficulty, and he kept walking. Okay, but as the day progressed, it started becoming worse. This forest was a very big and confusing forest which he had gotten into. Now he tried his best to walk in a definite direction, to walk on a certain path, but the paths of the forest, they twisted back and forth so strangely. He got so confused, and he kept walking and walking, but could not come to the end of the wood. He could not come out of that wood. He kept walking and walking in the wood. After that, he finally realized that he had not gone in far. He was walking in that same area, in that same part. The paths were so twisted, so confusing, that he thought that he had progressed, but he hadn't. He kept walking and walking around in that same path. So he was now he realized, his thoughts came back. His thoughts about the world being a rat trap. Okay? His thoughts about how the world was out there to trap everyone. And this person, this vagabond, had finally caught the bait. He had caught the bait, and now he was trapped. He himself was trapped in the very own world that he called as rat trap, and that he amused himself to think that other people were being caught in this rat trap. He was now himself caught. He finally realized that the whole forest, with all its trees, all its plants and shrubs and herbs, they were all like a prison that cannot be penetrated, that was impossible to enter or impossible to come out from. And it was like a prison that he will never be able to escape now. He finally realizes what he had done. He finally realizes that the consequences of his actions are going to be horrible. And he will have to face them, because he had now caught the bait. He had now taken the bait, and he was now caught. It was late in December. Darkness was already descending over the forest. This increased the danger, and increased also his gloom and despair. Finally he saw no way out, and he sank on the ground, tired to death, thinking that his last moment had come. But just as he laid his head on the ground, he heard a sound, a hard, regular thumping. There was no doubt as to what that was. He raised himself. "Those are hammer strokes from an iron mill," He thought, there must be people nearby. He summoned all of his strength, got up, and staggered in the direction of the sound. Now, since it was late in December and it was already winters, and during winters the days are shorter and the nights are longer, so the darkness was already coming. Okay, there was already darkness in the forest. Forests get darker, the night befalls the forest sooner. Okay, because of the trees, because of the thickness of the trees and the canopies that they form. All right. Now, because of that, this darkness had increased the danger of, wild animals coming out, or maybe thugs and loots and other kinds of criminals coming out. Okay, so there was an increase in danger here now, and also this nightfall increased his gloom, his sadness, and his disappointment. Okay, he finally got so tired he could see no way out. He gave up. And he sank to the ground. He sat on the ground, and he was so tired that he started thinking that it was his last moment now. That there was no escape from this this thick forest, and there was no way where he could go, and now he would die all alone in this forest. But just as he laid his head on the ground, he heard a sound. It was a hard, regular thumping sound, like somebody hitting something with a hammer. Okay, what was that something? It was iron. So he heard that some people were hitting on the iron with a hammer. Now he raised himself because he was very sure of what that sound was, and he thought to himself that those are hammer strokes, the sound of when the hammer hits the iron, okay, from an iron mill. Now, because he could hear the sound, he finally realized that there must be people nearby. Okay, and so that gave him a little hope. He summoned all his strength. He got up and staggered in the direction of the sound. He started walking in the direction of the sound. The Ramshaw Iron Works, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill, and forge. In the summer time, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal, which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. Okay, so this Ramshaw Iron Works, again, remember where we read this first? The crofter. The crofter was also the crofter, the one from whom this person has stolen 30 kroner. He also used to work on the as a crofter in Ramshaw Iron Works. Okay, as a farmer kind. You can say, you can call that person, or maybe you can call that person as someone who takes care of the cattle, not exactly a farmer. Okay, so let's just erase farmer. What's wrong with the eraser? Oh, come on. Yeah, there we go. So the crofter also worked worked for this Ramshaw Iron Works. Okay. Now this Ramshaw Iron Works, they are now closed down, but not but little in the past they were working, they were functional. Okay, and it was a large plant with smelter. Okay, that's an equipment that is used, like a furnace. It's used to extract metals from their ores. Okay, then rolling mill, forge. Forge is where the objects are made, okay, by heating, by shaping. And in summertime, there was long lines of heavy loaded barges and scows. These are kind of ships, boats, okay, that are used to carry heavy loads from the canals and the rivers, okay. So barges and scows, they were heavily loaded barges and scows. The business at that time was profitable when this beggar was roaming around. Okay. Now, and during the winters, the roads near this mill were all black because of the coal dust that came down, that was, sifted from the big charcoal crates. That was that came down, okay, that passed like through a sieve from the big charcoal crates. Now, during one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron, which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration. Though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Okay, so now during this one long dark evening, it was some time before Christmas. We saw that it was December, and it was some time before Christmas, just before Christmas, a day or two before Christmas. There was this master smith and his helper who were sitting near the dark forge, who were working near the furnace, and they were waiting for this iron to melt, okay, so that they could put it on the anvil. They could put it on the iron block, where they could give them the desired shape. Okay, pig iron is basically like blocks of iron. Okay, so this, he was trying to melt these iron. He was trying to make them so hot, so that hot enough for them to hit on them and give them the shape that they desire. Now, every now and then, in a few moments, this one of them, sometimes the master smith, sometimes the helper, would get up. They would move this glowing mass with a long iron bar, and then come back dripping with perspiration because it was so hot, and all they wore were just a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Okay, so it was so hot that even for a few moments when they were there just turning those blocks so that they can heat from all directions, okay, they could become red from all directions. These glowing mass, these are iron, okay, that pig iron, the iron blocks, they would, the place there was so hot that they would start dripping with perspiration, with sweat. Okay, all the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick-tiled roof. It was probably on account of all the noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge, until he stood close up to the furnace. Now, there was a lot of sound. Now imagine an iron mill, okay? It's a place where there's going to be a lot of sound, because there will be people hitting iron with hammer, okay, and then there'll be big tools that blow air, the bellows, okay, like there's something like this, okay, and these are the handles, and then when you press them, the air blows out from their mouth, okay, the air blows out. All right, so that is used to blow air into the furnace so that the fire can keep glowing, okay, it can keep going. And then there were the sound of the burning of the coal. Then there was this fire boy that would keep putting in more charcoal so that the fire does not go out, all right, into the mouth of the furnace. And then there was also waterfall. That means the rain had started pouring. Okay, the rain was also making sound. It was whipping along, because it was coming along with north wind. It was whipping against the brick tiled roof, so it was also making the sound. And it was because of this noise, all this noise, that the blacksmith did not notice that there was a certain man who had opened the gate and had entered the forge, until he came up close to this blacksmith, okay, close to the furnace. That's when the blacksmith finally noticed that somebody had entered. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of the light, which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. Okay, so because it was cold outside and now it was also raining, it is December, so it's Christmas time, and it's uh, very cold. All right, so it was nothing new for these blacksmiths to encounter vagabonds like these uh, now and then, because they did not have any better shelter, they did not have any better place to rest, they did not have homes, they did not have any warm place to go. The light from the furnace would attract them, and they would generally come in to spend the night by the furnace to stay in the warmth, so that they could escape the coldness of the night. So that's why these blacksmiths, they barely paid attention to them. He just casually looked once at this vagabond, and he saw that it was, and very indifferently he saw the intruder. He noticed that he was similar to other vagabonds that kept coming with the long beard, dirty, ragged, torn clothes, okay, and a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. That was his business. So he looked, he did not care, and that was it. Okay. He asked permission to stay. The master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. Okay. Now, this vagabond, or rat trap seller, he asked this master blacksmith if he could stay. He asked for permission, and the blacksmith, without even bothering to concern himself to even look at him, or to concern himself with this vagabond, without even looking at him, showing that he was proud, he was a better person than this vagabond, he just nods in consent. He allows him to stay. Okay, and does not even speak a word, does not even bother to talk to him. Okay, the tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, Ramshaw Iron Mill was owned by a very prominent iron master, whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible. At this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. Now, what happens is that the tramp is another word for beggar, for a person who does not have shelter. So the tramp also barely concerns himself with the way this blacksmith had behaved with him. He did not bother, because he was not there to talk to him. He was there just because he wanted to warm himself because of the cold outside, and just wanted to sleep. He wanted a place to sleep. So therefore, he did not also bother, and he just went to sleep near the furnace and to warm himself. Now, in those days, this Ramshaw iron mill was owned by this very famous iron master who wanted to ship out good iron to the market. Okay, so he was very ambitious, he was very hard working for his business, and he wanted to so he kept coming for inspections both night and day. He kept coming to check whether his work was being done to perfection. Okay, so at that very moment when the vagabond had entered, he also came for one of his nightly rounds of inspection to check what work was going on. All right. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin, who had eased his way so close to the furnace that the steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Now, when this ironmaster, the owner, he entered into this iron mill, the first thing he saw was this tall ragamuffin. Ragamuffin is again a person, another word to describe a beggar. Okay, to describe a person who is in dirty clothes, in torn, ragged clothes. Okay, generally it is used to describe a child. Okay, now this vagabond, this rat trap seller, had moved so close to the furnace that there was steam rising from his wet rags, from his wet clothes. However, the ironmaster did not behave like the blacksmith. He went up close to this stranger. Okay, the blacksmith had hardly given any look to the stranger, but this owner, he walked up close to him and he looked over very carefully. He literally scanned him. Okay, from head to toe, he looked at him. Then he tore off his slouch hat. This is a slouch hat. Okay, to get a better view of his face. And then he realized something. But of course it is you, Niels Olof. How you do look, he said. Okay, the man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramshow, and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought that he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Okay, so now as he was examining this person, he was examining this vagabond, he looked closely at his face and suddenly realized that it was a person he knew by the name, who went by the name Niels Olof. Okay, and he exclaims that he's very sad with the way this person looks. Okay, now this man with the rat traps, our vagabond, had never seen this ironmaster before. Okay, he did not even know what his name was. But he thought to himself that if this person thought of this vagabond to be his some old acquaintance, some person he knew, then he would be kind enough and he would give him a few kroners. Okay, he would give him some money. Therefore, he did not deny anything at once. Alright. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at that time, it never would have happened. Well, now, of course, you will come home with me. Okay. Now, he did not want to undeceive him, so he agrees. He says that yes, things have gone downhill, things have become bad with him, and so this our ironmaster, he says that he tells him that he should not have resigned from the regiment. Now, our ironmaster thinks that this vagabond is Niels Olof, who used to work with him in his regiment. Okay, when they were working in for the army. All right, when they were in the army, employed in the regiment. Okay, so he says that it was a mistake. That was the mistake that he made, and had he still been working in the regiment, his condition would not have become this bad. Okay, and he says that had he been working, had he not left the regiment before Niels Olof left, he's thinking of him as Niels Olof, but okay, so he says that had he not left, had he not had he still been in the service at that time, he would not have let Niels Olof resign. Okay, but now he says that he should join him at his home for dinner. Okay, to go along up to the manor house and be received by owner like an old regimental comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. No, I couldn't think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away inconspicuously as possible. Okay, now our kind ironmaster, thinking of this stranger as his old acquaintance, he invites him to his house. But thinking of him as an old regimental comrade, as a person who had worked with him in his regiment, okay. However, this thought of going to the house of this ironmaster did not please him, did not please this tramp, because he thought he had stolen money, and if he went with this iron master, it would be like going voluntarily, going by choice, and getting caught, because the news will definitely spread that he had stolen, that a person selling rat trap had stolen 30 kroner from the crofter, who had also been working at the Ramshaw iron works in his time. Okay, the old man. And now he thought that if he went along with this iron master, he would set himself up in this trap, from which he will never be able to come out. So all he wanted to do was to sleep in this sleep by that furnace in the forge, in the warmth, and then very quietly, very without attracting any attention, he wanted to just leave from that place so that nobody could catch him. He was also feeling very guilty and very scared of ending up in a trap. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. "Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there," he said. "Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we did not have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster." Now, when he declined his invitation, our ironmaster at first thought that our vagabond, our tramp, who he thinks of as Niels Olof, must be feeling embarrassed because of the clothing that he was wearing and because of his miserable condition. So he tells him that there is nothing to be worried about, and he does not need to feel shy, because his home is not like his home is not a place that he cannot show. His home is not that fine. His home is not that huge. Okay, or he's not that wealthy. And then he tells him that he does not need to worry because Elizabeth, his wife, is dead. And he, of course, assumes that he had already heard about it. His boys, that is, his sons, are abroad. And there was nobody except his oldest daughter and himself in the house, in that cottage, in the manor. And he tells him that they were just discussing today that it was very bad that they did not have any company for Christmas, that they did not have any guests over. So he requests him again to come along and to make this Christmas food disappear a little faster. That means to help him or to just join them for Christmas. Okay. But the stranger said no, and again no. And the iron master saw that he must give in, because the tramp kept declining. He really did not want to go to this ironmaster's house and then be caught, because he was scared. Okay, so he kept saying no and no, and finally the ironmaster saw that he must give in. There was no way that he would be able to convince Niels Olof, that is our tramp, to come along with him. "It looks as though Captain von Stell preferred to stay with you tonight, Sternstorm," he said to the master blacksmith, and turned on his heel. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. Okay. Now he finally gives in and he talks to Sternstorm. He says to Sternstorm, and indirectly for our um, vagabond, he says that our this vagabond now has a name, which is Captain Von Stell. Okay, so it's Neil Olof Von Stell, something like that, and he was the captain. This Niels Olof person was the captain, which he is assuming that this our vagabond is. Okay, he's mistaken vagabond for. All right. So now he talks to Storm. He tells him that it appears that our captain is preferring to stay in the furnace with him and in the forge with him, and then this iron master turned and he started leaving. But he laughed to himself. Okay, so this blacksmith who knew him very well knew that he was not done and that he is going to do something else to persuade our vagabond to come to go to his house for Christmas. Now, just as blacksmith had understood, he was very right. Half an hour later, not even half an hour, some minutes before that, a little time before half an hour, they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge. And then there was a new guest in the forge, but this time it was not the ironmaster. He had instead sent his daughter. Apparently, he was hoping that she had better persuasion skills, persuasion powers than the ironmaster himself. He entered, followed by a valet, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on the bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor, and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head, and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. Now, what happens is that our iron master, he sends his daughter Edla to persuade our vagabond into staying the night with them and to enjoy Christmas with them. Okay, so um, Edla comes in about almost half an hour later, and she straight away, the scene is the same. The people who are working, the blacksmith and his apprentice. His um, apprentice is a person who's working under a person to learn the skill. Okay, so you can say a student. Okay, wait 1 second. This apprentice, the student, okay, is still there. They're still turning the iron and the charcoal is still glowing, so the scene hasn't changed much. That means this basically shows that not a lot of time has passed since our iron master left. Okay, so this shows that not much time has passed. Not much time difference, you can say. Alright, so there is not much time difference between Edla's arrival and our Iron Master's departure. Now this vagabond, he had stretched himself out on the floor next to the furnace, and he had put a piece of iron, the pig iron, under his head. His hat he had pulled down over his face, over his eyes, so that he could go to sleep. When Edla looked at him, and she went up to him and lifted his hat so that she could make an eye contact with this person. Okay, the man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. So he was sleeping with one eye closed and one eye open. As soon as he saw the girl, he jumped up abruptly and he seemed to be quite frightened. "My name is Edla Wilmanson," said the young girl. "My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forest tonight. And then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I'm so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time." Now, she introduces herself, tells him that she's Edla Wilmanson, the daughter of our iron master, Mr. Wilmanson. Okay, and she tells him that her father had come home and told her. So she doesn't say that her father has asked her to come over and to persuade him on his behalf, on the father's behalf. Instead, she tells him that she's come on her own will, of her own will, and because she heard from her father that this vagabond wanted to sleep in the forest that night. Okay. And now she also assumes that he's the captain, since our vagabond did not deny as to not being the captain. Now she's also thinking that he's the captain, and she's persuading him. She feels sorry, she feels bad, sympathetic that he's having such a bad time, such a hard time, he's in such poverty, and she wants to, she tells him that she took permission to bring this our Captain Wanstell home. Okay. She looked at him compassionately, with her heavy eyes. Then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he has stolen something, or else he has escaped from jail, she thought, and added quickly, "You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve." She said this in such a friendly manner that the Rattrap peddler must have felt confidence in her. Okay, so now what happens is that when she looks at him, she realizes that this man is afraid, and she thinks to herself, she assumes that he probably has stolen something, or he has escaped from jail. So she still thinks that he's the captain, but then she considers his situation and thinks that he has probably stolen something. Alright, or maybe he has escaped from jail, and hence he is scared to go anywhere near the village, or where he could encounter a lot of people, especially someone who's a prominent person. Okay, like our iron master, the owner of the Ramshaw ironworks. Now, so to ensure him that they would not hand him over to the police, or or they would bring him any harm, she tells him, she tries to convince him by saying that he will be allowed to leave as freely as he joins them, as freely as he came. So they will not do anything to harm him, or they will not hand him over to the police. She requests him to come to stay over till Christmas Eve. Okay, so she requests him to come and stay over for Christmas Eve, and she says that in such a friendly manner, with such compassion, that the Rattrap peddler finally felt confidence in her, finally felt like he would be safe, he would not be mistreated. "It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss," he said. "I will come at once." Now finally he feels confident, he feels safe, and he agrees to accompany Edla Wilmanson to their manor, to their house. He says that he would have never thought that Edla would trouble herself for him. Okay, she would have to come all the way in this rain and in that cold weather for to take him along. So this simply shows that her kindness, the way she was talking, and her reassurance that he would be allowed to leave and that they would not do him any harm, that makes him feel confident and safe enough to agree to go to their house for the Christmas Eve. He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him, and with a deep bow threw it over his rags and followed the young lady out to the carriage, without granting the astonished blacksmith so much as a glance. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had evil forebodings. Okay, so now he accepts the fur coat that this one Edla Wilmanson had brought along with her, with a deep bow showing his gratitude. Okay, and then he put it over his rags, his clothes, and then followed the young lady out to the carriage, without even looking at the astonished blacksmiths, because blacksmiths was astonished as to why they were taking so much care of this one peddler. Okay, so he does not even bother to look up at them. So it is now his chance to feel proud, okay, and treat them in the same way as they did, because now he is the guest of their master, of their head, of their boss. Okay, so now he feels that his position is above them. Hence the blacksmiths are astonished, and he does not even give them a glance. He does not even look at them. Okay, but while he was riding up to the manor house, while he was riding up to their house, he had evil forebodings. Okay, he started feeling that sense of danger. He started feeling that some trouble was coming. Okay, forebodings. Why the devil did I take that fellow's money, he thought. Now I'm sitting in the trap and will never get out of it. Okay, now he's regretting his actions. Over here he shows regret for his actions. All right. Regret. Okay. Now the next day was Christmas Eve. When the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade, whom he had run across so unexpectedly. Now this incident happened a day before Christmas Eve. So this happened on 23rd of December. Okay, he stole on 22nd of December. Then he roamed around. This happened on 23rd of December. So you can say 22nd of December he visited the crofter's house. Okay, and stayed the night there. Then on 23rd of December, 23rd December, he stole the money. Okay, stole the money. Why is this pen not writing? Okay, stole the money. Then 23rd of December was the whole day. He went, he kept roaming around in the forest, and he kept, thinking, and then finally when the night fell, he was all alone and scared, and he thought he was about to die when he heard the sound from the iron mill. Okay, where he met Edla and her father, the iron master. Okay, then now, so this is 23rd December, and then he finally goes to the manor house. All right, he finally goes to the manor house. All this has happened on 23rd of December. He has slept, and now it is 24th of December's morning. Okay, now this is the Christmas Eve, the day of the Christmas Eve, morning of the Christmas Eve, let's say. Okay, and now this iron master, the one who had brought him home, he's feeling very satisfied that for breakfast he's feeling very satisfied that finally he was able to convince his old friend, his old buddy, his old you can say comrade, his old regimental comrade, whom he had run across so unexpectedly. He hadn't expected to meet this Niels Olof, but he was satisfied with himself that he was able to convince Niels Olof to come and stay and spend some time with him so that he could help him out. All right. First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones, he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table. And then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling rat traps. It is queer that things have downhill with him as badly as that, said the daughter. Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. You must have patience, my little girl, said the father. As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with his tramp clothes. Okay, so now this man is still sure. He's still, you know, you can say, yeah, he's still sure that this tramp is his old comrade, his old buddy, and so he decides that he starts planning, okay, that he should feed him, okay, that he should feed him, and then they should talk about some occupation. They should help him find some occupation so that he could be freed from this this work of selling rat traps and earn a decent living. Okay, to which Edla replies that she did not feel that this vagabond was once an educated man. Okay, so her father again tries to, you know, convince her that this person is the same Nils Olof. Okay, the same person who used to work with him. Olof. Alright. That used to work with him. And he reassures her that once all the dirty clothes come off and he's changed and bathed and cleaned and becomes well dressed, that's when Edla will also be able to see that he was the same person that his father was thinking about. Okay, that his father had worked with, which was Captain von Stell, which was Niels Olof. Just as he said this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. Moreover, he was dressed in a good-looking suit of clothes which belonged to the ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and whole shoes. Okay, so just as our ironmaster was trying to convince Edla that he's the same person that he's thinking of, this vagabond enters all cleaned up and well dressed. Okay, the valet had helped him take a bath, and he had cut his hair off and trimmed his hair, you know, like given him a good hairstyle, a good haircut, and shaved him. So now he was looking all clean. Okay, he was all clean, he was all dressed up in the clothes that our iron master used to wear. Okay, so iron master had lent him some clothes. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar, and also he wore whole shoes. But although his guest was now so well groomed, the iron master did not seem pleased. He looked at him with puckered brow, and it was easy to understand that when he had seen the strange fellow under the fellow in the uncertain reflection from the furnace, he might have made a mistake. But that now, when he stood there in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. Now what happens is that our finally, when he takes a good look, okay, it's all run away. Yeah, we have a lot to discuss. Okay, so finally, when our vagabond, he comes out all dressed, and now the ironmaster takes a good look at him. He is not pleased anymore. Okay, why is he not pleased? Because now he realizes that he had made a mistake, that the person he thought this vagabond was during this light from the furnace at night, the person in the broad daylight, he was not the same person he thought he was. Okay, so he finally realized that he had made a mistake, and he had taken him for to be someone he was not. He was not his friend. He was not his comrade. He was not the person he had worked with. Okay, what does this mean? He thundered. The stranger made no attempt to dissimulate. He saw at once that the splendor had come to an end. "It is not my fault, sir," he said. "I never pretended to be anything but a poor trader, and I pleaded and begged to be allowed to stay in the forge. But no harm has been done. At worst, I can put on my rags again and go away." Now, our ironmaster is very angry, and he questions him with anger as to why this person has come home with him. Okay, he is very angry at the person. Now the stranger tells him that the stranger did not make any attempt to hide or to conceal his identity. Okay, he saw that it was all over. Okay, there was no point in pretending, because he knew that this ironmaster had finally realized that he was not the same person that he was thinking him to be. Okay, so all this splendor, all the good treatment is now going to end. So finally he responds that it is not his fault, because he had pleaded, he had begged to be allowed to stay in that forge. He had not pretended to be anything else. He had not pretended to be the person they were thinking him to be. Okay. And then he tries to convince him by saying that no harm has been done. Only thing is that he had cleaned up and showered and just used his clothes, used our ironmaster's clothes. And so he says that at worst, what he can do is that he can just put on his clothes back, put his clothes back on, and he can just leave. "Well," said the ironmaster, hesitating a little, "it was not quite honest either. You must admit that. And I should not be surprised if the sheriff would like to have something to say in the matter." Okay, so now the ironmaster says he's also hesitating a little, because he realizes that he was the one who forced him to come home with him. Okay, and then he also sent his daughter to persuade him to come, and he had finally agreed to them. Now, so he says that even still, our stranger, our vagabond, was still not completely honest. Okay, and he says that he's supposed to admit that, and he threatens that he would like to call the sheriff into the matter. The tramp took a step forward and struck the table with his fist. "Now I'm going to tell you, Mr. Ironmaster, how the things are," he said. "This whole world is nothing but a big rat trap. All the good things that are offered to you are nothing but cheese rinds, bits and bits of pork, set out to drag a poor fellow into trouble. And if the sheriff comes now and locks me up for this, then you, Mr. Ironmaster, must remember that a day may come when you yourself may want to get a big piece of pork, and then you will get caught in the trap." Okay, so remember, this vagabond used to think that the whole world is a rat trap. Now he's come back to that theory. Okay, that the whole world is a huge rat trap, and everything that it gives is bait. Okay, and he himself had taken that bait when he stole, and then when he agreed to come to their house. Okay, so he tells him this theory. He's very angry now, because he had not done anything wrong. Technically, in this circumstance, he hadn't, uh, other than thinking that he would get some money. okay, by pretending a little bit. But then, so he explains this theory to Mr. Ironmaster. He tells him that the world is nothing but a big rat trap, and that all things that are offered to him, he thinks of himself as the rat. Okay, and he thinks that the Ironmaster had laid out this entire, uh, this plan to catch him and to give him to the and to hand him over to the police, to the sheriff. Okay, so he tells him that everything that is offered to you is nothing but cheese rinds. Okay, these are the skin of cheese, the thick skin of cheese. Okay, that and bits of pork that are put as bait for rats. Okay, to catch rats. Okay, so he is comparing himself to a rat now. And he says that if the sheriff now comes and locks him up for this, then he threatens the Iron Master that someday even the Iron Master will fall for this trap, and someday he will want something better, something bigger, a big piece of pork. And then even the Iron Master will get caught in the trap. The Iron Master began to laugh. That was not so badly said, my good fellow. Perhaps we should let the sheriff alone on Christmas Eve. But now get out of here as fast as you can. Okay, so now the Iron Master realizes that it was his mistake as well, because he had persuaded him too much, and so he agrees not to call in the sheriff and to let this vagabond leave. But just as the man was opening the door, the daughter said, I think he ought to stay with us today. I don't want him to go. And with that she went and closed the door. What in the world are you doing? Said the father. The daughter stood there quite embarrassed, hardly knew what to answer. That morning she had felt so happy when she thought how homelike and Christmassy she was going to make things for the poor, hungry wretch. She could not get away from the idea all at once. That was why she had interceded for the vagabond. Okay, so now while just as the vagabond was opening the door to leave, the daughter Edla Wilmanson, she interrupts and she says that he should stay back. Okay, he should stay for the Christmas Eve as they had invited him, and she did not want him to go. With that, while saying that, she went and she closed the door. Now her father was a little shocked. He was a little taken aback, and he questions as to what she was doing. Why was she, making this person stay, even though they knew they now knew that he is not an acquaintance. He's a stranger. Why is she asking a stranger to stay back? All right. And to this, the daughter was a little embarrassed, and she did not know what to answer. That morning she had felt so happy that she would be able to do something nice for someone. Okay, even though she had, she had that intuition that this person was not the same person her father was thinking to be. Okay, she already had some intuition in her mind, and yet she wanted to do something nice for this poor wretch, for this poor unhappy person. Okay, so and she could not leave that idea all at once. She could not accept that now she would not be able to do something nice for this man, and this was the reason why she had intervened, because she wanted to do something nice. That was the reason why she had intervened, and she had persuaded the person to come and stay with them for Christmas Eve. Okay, and to not let him leave at that moment. I'm thinking of the stranger here, said the young girl. He walks and walks the whole year long, and there is probably not a single place in the whole country where he is welcome and can feel at home. Wherever he turns, he is chased away. Always he's afraid of being arrested and cross-examined. I should like to have him enjoy a day of peace with us here. Just one in the whole year. Okay, so now And the daughter, who did not have any answer at first, she simply says that this this poor man, keeps walking around the country all the year round. Okay, every single day of the year, this man keeps walking. There is no place where he can go, no place that he can call home and feel safe. He cannot feel safe anywhere. All right. So, and wherever he goes, people just turn him away, they chase him away. Nobody wants to keep him. Okay, nobody wants to make him feel loved, or nobody wants to show any kindness to him. And so she feels that he should stay. Okay, he should at least have one day of peace where he does not have to think about his safety, where he can feel like home and he can rest. Okay, just one in whole year is the argument she gives for her action. The ironmaster mumbled something in his beard. He could not bring himself to oppose her. Okay, so he said something inaudible, and he was not able to go against her. It was all a mistake, of course, she continued. But anyway, I don't think we ought to chase a human being whom we have asked to come here and to whom we have promised Christmas cheer. Okay, so now she can see that she's almost convinced her father, so she adds another point that yes, she understands that it was all a mistake and that they should have verified whether the person was the same person they thought him to be. But she says that it's okay. That see, after all, he's also a human being, and just for that sake, just for the sake of humanity, they should just let him stay, because they were the ones to have asked, to have persuaded him to come and stay at their place and to enjoy Christmas with them, and that they had promised him Christmas cheer, and they should not turn him away so cruelly like that on Christmas Eve. You do preach worse than a parson, said the ironmaster. I only hope you won't have to regret this. Okay, a parson is a person who is an ordained Christian person, like a father. Okay, responsible for a small area, typically a parish. Okay, now the young girl took the stranger by the hand and led him up to the table. Now sit down and eat, she said, for she could see that her father had given in. Now, her father sarcastically comments that she preaches worse than a father of the church, okay, a parson. And he just says that he hopes that she doesn't regret her actions, because this is a stranger, and the stranger could be anyone and could have done anything before that, up till that day. All right. So now she ignores his warning and his sarcasm, and she just takes this stranger by the hand, leads him up to the table, and asks him to sit and eat. She could see that her father had agreed and he had given in. Okay, he had agreed to what she was uh, doing and what she had asked him to do. The man with the rat traps said not a word. He only sat down and helped himself to food. Time after time he looked at the young girl who had interceded for him. Interceded means intervened. Why had she done it? What could the crazy idea be? Now this vagabond was so habitual, the rat trap seller was so habitual to people mistreating him, that he could not wrap his head around what had happened, around why Edla Wilmanson was being so kind to him. Okay, he kept thinking that probably there was something, uh, some other intention, some ulterior motive that this girl had. Okay, so he could not digest. He did not say anything. He just helped himself to food. He started eating, but he could not digest the idea as to why she was being so kind to him. Okay, why she had intervened for him, why she had not let him leave when he was leaving. Okay. After that, Christmas Eve at Ramshaw passed just as it always had. The stranger did not cause any trouble because he did nothing but sleep. The whole forenoon he lay on the sofa in one of the guest rooms, and slept at one stretch. At noon they woke him up so that he could have his share of the good Christmas fare, but after that he slept again. It seemed as though for many years he had not been able to sleep as quietly and safely here at Ramshaw. So, what happened was that the Christmas Eve, the day, passed very peacefully. Okay, he did not cause any trouble, he did not do anything, he just kept sleeping. Our Rattrap seller kept sleeping in the guest house. He slept as if he hadn't slept for years. So he was finally feeling safe and he was finally feeling like home. He had to be woken up in the afternoon so that he could eat and he could enjoy Christmas a little bit. Alright, so he was woken up, otherwise he kept sleeping. In the evening, when the Christmas tree was lighted, they woke him up again, and he stood for a while in the drawing room, blinking as though the candlelight hurt him. But after that he disappeared again. 2 hours later he was aroused once more. He then had to go down into the dining room and eat Christmas fish and porridge. So all day, all he did was nothing but sleep, and occasionally he was woken up to enjoy Christmas, to be a part of the Christmas celebrations, to light up the Christmas tree, and finally he was woken up to eat dinner, which was Christmas fish and porridge. As soon as they got up from the table, he went around to each one present and said thank you and good night. But when he came to the young girl, she gave him to understand that it was her father's intention that the suit which he wore was to be a Christmas present. He did not have to return it. And if he wanted to spend next Christmas Eve in a place where he could rest in peace and be sure that no evil would befall him, he would be welcomed back again. Okay, so while he was thanking everyone present there and wishing them good night, he finally came to Edla, who indirectly told him that he could keep the clothes, okay, and that he finally had a place to call home. Okay, so he could keep the clothes and he could finally have a home, and he could and if he wanted to spend the next Christmas Eve at their place to just feel safe and to sleep peacefully, he would be welcomed back. He would not be asked to leave. Okay, so clothes was his present, his gift. All right, now the man with the rat traps did not answer anything to this. He only stared at the young girl in boundless amazement. He was still unable to digest as to why Edla was being so kind. Okay, so he could not muster the courage to answer anything. He did not answer. He couldn't really understand this kindness. Okay, so he did not answer anything. He just kept staring at the girl in boundless amazement. The next morning the ironmaster and his daughter got up in good season, that is early, to go to the early Christmas service. Their guest was still asleep and they did not disturb him. So the next morning both the ironmaster and his daughter Edla, they woke up early and they left for their Christmas service at the church, and left our vagabond sleeping. They did not disturb him. When at about 10 o'clock they drove back from the church, the young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. Dejectedly is disappointed, okay, unhappy or disappointed. At church she had learnt that one of the old crofters of the iron works had been robbed by a man who went around selling rat traps. So they finally found out that this vagabond, this rat trap seller, had stolen money from the old crofter, the 30 kroners. Okay, and to which she was very sad. She felt very sad, very disappointed. She was hoping that this person was not a thief, although she had that intuition that he had done something, and that's why he was scared to go with them. Okay, So now she finds out that he had stolen those 30 kroners, okay, from our crofter. Yes, that was a fine fellow you let into the house, said the father. I only wonder how many silver spoons are left in the cupboard by this time. Okay, now the father got a chance to, comment on her actions. So he sarcastically tells her that she had made a mistake. She should not have let the stranger stay when he was about to leave. Okay, and then he tells her, he again sarcastically makes the comment that, thinking that how many silver spoons are left in the cupboard now. So he's commenting that probably he is also stolen from their house. Okay. Now the wagon had hardly stopped at the front steps when the ironmaster asked the valet whether the stranger was still there. He added that he had heard that at church that the man was a thief. The valet answered that the fellow had gone and he had not taken anything with him at all. On the contrary, he had left behind a little package which Miss Wilmanson was to be kind enough to accept as a Christmas present. So now the first thing when they got down, our ironmaster asked whether this our Rattrap seller had stolen anything from their house. But the valet ensures him that he had not taken anything at all, and instead he had left a gift for Miss Wilmanson, for Edla, a Christmas present. The young girl opened the package, which was so badly done up that the contents came into view at once. She gave a little cry of joy. She found a small rat trap, and in it lay 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes. But that was not all. In the rat trap lay also a letter with large, jagged characters. Okay, so the gift that he had left for Edla included a small rat trap, 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes that he had stolen, and that was not it. There was also a letter that was written in large, shaky handwriting. Okay. Now let's see what had been written in the letter. Honored and noble miss, since you have been so nice to me all day long, as if I was a captain, I want to be nice to you in return, as if I was a real captain. For I do not want you to be embarrassed at this Christmas season by a thief. But you can give back the money to the old man on the roadside, who has the money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for poor wanderers. The rat trap is a Christmas present from a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to captain, because in that way he got the power to clear himself. Written with friendship and high regard, Captain Wanstall. Now, he had left a small rat trap, the pouch with notes, and the letter. Okay, in the letter, he, you can say he really praises the kindness. You can see here the kindness has led to redemption. The kindness has finally led to redemption. Okay, it has led to change of heart. Change of heart. Whose change of heart? Of our rat trap seller. Okay, rat trap seller. Now this rat trap seller has a change of heart because of the kindness of our girl Edla Wilmanson. Okay, and he leaves her this rat trap and the money that he had stolen and thanks her for the Christmas season. He tells her that because even though he was not a captain, yet he was treated like one. He was respected. Okay, Edla had also given him respect. Okay, just like a person deserves, and that respect, that raise in his position, gave him the power to free himself from the rat trap that he had trapped himself in. Okay, all this kindness and all this respect, that it gave him the power for freedom. It gave him the power to be freed from the rat trap. So that's what he tells her in this letter, that he did not want her to be embarrassed, because now uh, he must have realized that of course he would be this truth had to come out one day or the other, and it probably must have come out when they went to church and all the people gathered there. They would have learned, and so he did not want Edla's kindness to be seen as a weakness. Okay, and he did not want her to be ridiculed by people, thinking that her kindness was a foolishness. Okay, so he leaves all that possession by telling, and also tells her that this pouch the crofter hangs on his window is kind of a bait for poor wanderers, for poor people who wander, and that he was now able to free himself from this rat trap. He was able to leave the bait, and he was able to clear his name. All right. So written with friendship and high regard, Captain von Stell. This was such a heart-touching story. This tells us that kindness always leads to change in heart. It leads to redemption. Okay, all these things, sin is stealing. Okay, sin we saw, then we saw kindness, then we saw redemption. Okay, from sin to someone showing kindness to the sinner, and then from that to redemption of the sinner. These are this is the philosophy of Christianity, that even if you have sinned, and you can always redeem through kindness. You can be redeemed, and any person who has been who has even fallen very far, okay, he has done a lot of bad deeds, they still have a chance at redemption, at forgiveness. Okay, I hope the story is clear to you, and we will now move on to the literary aspects. But before that, we are going to take a quick recap of the major events that we have seen in this story. Okay, so first it begins with the poor peddler. We get introduced to the poor peddler. He sells rat traps and is homeless and hungry. Now we get to know his view that the world is a rat trap, and that people get caught by material temptations. One day he is given shelter by an old crofter who shows him kindness and even his money. The peddler steals the money and escapes into the wood, but gets lost in a forest. He seeks refuge at a manor, where the ironmaster mistakes him for an old acquaintance. Okay, he first seeks refuge at the forge, at this ironmaster's forge. Okay, the iron mill, and then he's taken to the manor where, because at the forge the iron master mistakes him for an old acquaintance, and then he's taken to the manor. Though initially turned out when discovered, the ironmaster's daughter Edla treats him with kindness and respect. The peddler, touched by Edla's goodness, has a change of heart, returns the stolen money, and leaves a note saying he's been lifted out of the rat trap. Okay, so he has been redeemed. He is now free. Otherwise, he would have to, carry the weight of this theft throughout his life, had he not met Edla, and had Edla also not been so kind and respectful to him. He would have had to continue. He would not have given his stolen money back, and he would have to continue to suffer in the guilt and the of stealing, and he would have been caught in the rat trap. But thankfully to Edla's kindness and her respect, that he was able to uh, redeem himself, and he was able to be freed from the rat trap, from the trap that he had fallen into, the trap of temptation. Rat trap is basically a symbol for the trap of temptations. Now let's discuss the themes. The first one is that the world is being seen as a rat trap. Okay, Rat trap. This is also part of symbolism. Then compassion and redemption. When a person shows compassion, even the people who have committed huge crimes can be, redeemed. So compassion leads to redemption. Then judgment versus understanding, that there were people who were judging him because of his looks and because of the way, and then there was Edla who was understanding. Okay, so this is the rest of the world. Okay, including our Iron Master, rest of the world, who saw the poor peddler as something to be shooed away, something that was not a part of the society. Okay, and then there was Edla Wilmanson, who was very understanding towards our poor peddler. Okay, then dignity and self-worth. This is what our Captain Wonstel realizes once he gets respect from Edla and sees the kindness. He realizes about dignity and what is his self-worth. Okay, sorry. And finally, we have appearance versus reality. Okay, so one must not really judge a person on their appearance. How a person appears should not be the sole criteria for judgment, because had the people treated this rat trap seller kindly, other people except Edla, had the rest of the world also treated him kindly and with respect, he wouldn't have turned out to be what he turned out to be. Okay, he wouldn't have become a thief. He wouldn't have to resort to theft to, HIEF. He would not have to resort to theft to fulfill his needs. Versus reality. Okay, appearance versus reality. Reality could be something very different if one tries to see, like Edla could see the reality. Okay, Edla's compassion could see the reality that he was probably scared. Okay, because of the hard life that he had to live. Now, the tone of this story is first is grim and ironic, and then it becomes uplifting and hopeful by the end, when the compassion turns uh, our peddler into a kind man. Okay, first the same man is very grim, he's very sad because he's all lonely, and now finally he finds two people he can call his own and he can come back home to. Mood alternates between somber, that is sad, tense, and finally redemptive and warm. Okay, so the mood changes from, first it's sad, then it's a little tense because he's stolen the money and what happens. Okay, and then finally he's redeemed, and then the story ends at a warm note, showing that he is now a free person and a better person than he was before. He's not that sour, he's not that angry at the world anymore. Finally, the style of writing. This is been told as a moral fable or a fairy tale, which is simple. The style is very simple, and yet it is symbolic. It uses narrative, irony, dialogue, and symbolism, and is written in third person omniscient voice. Okay, so it's a third person voice that is narrating a story like a fairy tale. Literary devices. The first is allegory, that the whole world is a rat trap. Then next, symbolism. The rat trap itself equals temptation, materialism, spiritual entrapment. Okay, so rat trap is the symbol for temptation, for materialism, and for spiritual entrapment. Irony. A thief transforms into a nobleman. Foreshadowing. The peddler's philosophy reveals the story's outcome. Okay, we can see, because foreshadowing is when we already know what the uh, this peddler was thinking, and that came out to be true. Okay, that has been shown throughout his philosophy, that the whole world is a rat trap, was shown throughout the story when he was himself caught in that rat trap, when he took the bait. So that is foreshadowing. Then contrast Edla versus the world's cruelty, peddler's two natures also. Okay, so there are two contrasts. First is when we see that the rest of the world is cruel while Edla is kind. Okay, and then we have peddler's two natures. First is that cruel and bitter nature. Okay, he's very bitter in the beginning when people have treated him cruelly, and then he becomes a kind and compassionate person, a warm person, when he's been shown kindness by Edla. So there are two contrasts. Okay, so allegory has already been covered. This came up twice. Now let's discuss the main characters. The first one is our protagonist, which is the peddler, who is a homeless man who sells rat traps and is hardened by the world's cruelty. Then we have the crofter, who was a kind, lonely man who helps the peddler and gets betrayed. Then ironmaster, he was strict, but ultimately he was a decent man. Then we have Edla Wilmanson, who was the ironmaster's daughter. She's shown to be kind-hearted, and very compassionate. And then the world, which is the symbolic character that has been present in the story, and this represents a giant rat trap. Finally, let's discuss the message or the moral that the story gives. Since it's a moral fable, it gives us a very strong message of kindness, of compassion, and of redemption. It also tells us how sin leads to a person being guilty, and how the person ends up, in miserable condition because of his own actions, his or her own actions. And then how, even still, there is a chance for redemption, there is a chance for freedom from all that trap. So, first story is moral is that even the most fallen people can be redeemed through love and compassion. So, even if the people have committed a lot of crimes, they can be redeemed, they can be made better through love and compassion. Then next we have the story promotes human dignity, morality, and faith in goodness. And finally, kindness is the key to transformation, not punishment. This is a very important message that this story gives, that if you keep punishing a person for something that they have done, or maybe not even done at times, that person turns into a cruel, a hard person. Okay, that leads to cruelty. However, kindness is the key. That is what tells you that transformation is possible only through kindness. Okay, so I hope the chapter is clear to you, and with this we come to an end of this to this beautiful chapter.
And so our very peddler left not with stolen money, but with dignity, a new name, and a thank you letter that glowed brighter than gold. Because sometimes it only takes one open door to unlock a better version of ourselves. Join our WhatsApp channels today for more tales that teach, quotes that sparkle, and study hacks that guide your way from CBSE to PGT and beyond. Links are in the description. Follow the trail and keep exploring with the Eloquent Explorers. Until next time, see ya!